Now, when countries trade with each other and export or import things from each other, then this international trade in turn creates a movement, an international movement of money between different countries. So for instance, if a Pakistani firm exports t-shirts to somebody in the UK, then this UK guy, he will of course have to pay for these t-shirts. So he will send money to this Pakistani firm. And this is where we say that, look, these international transactions between countries where Pakistan is exporting t-shirts to somebody in the UK will lead to an inflow of money into Pakistan. Money will move internationally from UK into Pakistan. And on the other hand, think of an import, and let's assume Pakistan decides to import or buy a barrel of oil from Saudi Arabia. Then of course Pakistan will have to pay for this barrel of oil, and therefore there will be an outflow of money from Pakistan into Saudi Arabia. So as far as Pakistan is concerned, we say that all of these imports, when Pakistanis buy products from other countries, all of these imports will generate outflow of money from the country. Now you see these exports and imports, they are just one of the many different possible international transactions that in turn create this international movement of money between countries. So you can think of many other international transactions that may create inflow or outflow. So for instance, think of foreign investment. So if some Chinese firm, let's assume, decides to come and invest in Pakistan, then whenever Pakistan receives foreign investment, that would mean that there would be an inflow of money into Pakistan. Because these Chinese guys, of course, they will have to bring in money before they can invest here. On the other hand, again, sticking to this foreign investment, remember that sometimes Pakistanis will decide that, look, we are going to shift and settle in, let's say, Dubai, and take some of money and try to invest it there. So foreign investments, when they move out of the country, they also entail that money will flow out of the country. And similarly, you can think about international loans. If Pakistan gives a loan to some other country, that would again mean that money will move out from Pakistan, move into some other country. On the other hand, if Pakistan takes a loan, borrows from some other country, that would mean money will flow into Pakistan. Now, we will, as we go through the section, we'll look at all the different possible transactions, international transactions, and the sort of money flows that they create. But the more important basic concept that I want you to understand here is that you see all of these international transactions which involve residents of two different countries. These international transactions, they are usually always conducted in the international standard currency, which happens to be the US dollar. So when Pakistani firm is exporting goods, then regardless of which country you are exporting to, whether you are selling these t-shirts to somebody in the UK or China or US or Africa or somebody in China or Japan, regardless of the country, this international transaction, it will be conducted in US dollars. So all of these inflows, all of this money that flows from some other country into Pakistan, this will always be US dollars that flow in. And similarly, all of these outflows, when you have to pay money to buy imports or when you take money out to invest in other countries, this will always be an outflow of US dollars, regardless of which country you are importing from, regardless of which country you are going and taking your money out to go and invest. It's always dollars that move in and move out because of countries' international transactions. Now, countries, they keep a very close eye on these inflows and outflows of dollars that take place. And then every year, or after some specific period of time, maybe sometimes 3 months, but usually after every year, the government of the country will publish a very formal, detailed record of these different inflows and outflows of dollars because of all of these international transactions that are carried out by the country in that period of time. So basically, you can think of it as the country at the end of every year publishing its own bank statement, telling its own citizens and the international community about the amount of dollars that are flowing into the country and the different transactions that are creating those inflows, and the amount of dollars that have flown out of the country and the transactions that have created those outflows. They report all of that in sort of a bank statement of a country, and it is this bank statement reporting the inflows and outflows of dollars from a country throughout the year. This is what is known as the country's balance of payments account. And this is something extremely informative. It tells us a lot about what is going on with the country and what are the potential risks and what are the potential strengths of that country's economy. This balance of payments account, this bank statement recording these inflows and outflows of dollars. Now, you see, the thing is that I'm calling it a bank statement because that is the sort of broad concept of this balance of payments. It's an attempt to record these inflows and outflows of dollars. But remember, it's a very, very sophisticated thing. You can't just throw the inflows and outflows because of any transaction into any part of the statement. No, there is a very set formal structure that each country has to follow. There are some international standards. There is this international format according to which you have to divide this country's balance of payment into 4 different sections. Now, the 2 of these sections are just a formality, so we will be focusing on talking about the first section, which is known as the current account, and the second section, which is known as the financial account. Now, both these financial as well as the current account, they are then further divided into different subsections. But you see, the main role or the main function of all of these different parts, these sections and subsections of the balance of payments, all of them are trying to do one same thing. They are trying to record the inflows and outflows of dollars. Now, the basic rule that you need to remember is that every time there is an inflow of dollars, regardless of which part of that balance of payments will record that inflow of dollars, the basic rule is that the amount of dollars that come in, they will be recorded as a positive value, whereas whenever there is an outflow of dollars, then the amount of dollars that are moving out, they will be recorded as a negative value in your balance of payments. So let me write that down. This is important for you to remember. All the inflows of dollars recorded as a plus, all the outflows of dollars, they are going to be recorded as a minus. Now, those are the first few basics that you need to know before we talk about the details of balance of payments. And what I want to do here to close this video is that I want to talk about something very, very important, and that's something that will give us a very useful sort of a concept before we move on and look at the details of balance of payments. And what I want to turn your attention now towards is I want you to think about, why do countries even bother about reporting these inflows and outflows of dollar every year? Because you see, it's not an easy task. It requires a lot of manpower, it requires a lot of effort, it requires a lot of time to report the inflows and outflows because of all the different international transactions that a country conducts over the period of a year. Because every year, you see, there are going to be thousands and thousands of different international transactions that your country will be involved in. So for the government to be keeping an eye on all of these different transactions and then maintaining the data and record of, how many dollars are coming in, how many dollars are going out, and then reporting all of this, it's a huge task. And that begs the question, that what is the significance of these dollar inflows and outflows? Why would the country want to know the amount of dollar inflows and outflows? Now, you see, the reason why these inflows and outflows of dollars matter is that this total amount of dollars that come in and move out of the country, that has a very, very direct implication for the exchange rate of the country's currency. And it is very important that you are able to understand why these inflows and outflows of dollars that are recorded within the balance of payments, why do they and how do they impact the exchange rate of the country's currency. And it is very easy and interesting to understand. So let me end this video by explaining that link between the dollar inflow, outflow and the country's exchange rate. So let's consider this example of a Pakistani firm exporting t-shirts to UK. Now, as this Pakistani firm receives dollar inflows as a form of payment for these exports, these t-shirts that it has sold, this firm or the owners of these firms, they will eventually receive these dollars. Now, you see, the thing is that living in Pakistan, before you can spend these dollars that you have just earned because of exports, and before you can use them to buy goods and services in Pakistan, you will need to convert these dollars into the local currency, the Pakistani rupee. Now, how are you supposed to convert these dollars into rupees? Well, you will go to an FX market. Now, think of this FX market simply as a shop, which is, instead of selling the usual things such as mobile phone or clothes or laptops and so on and so forth, this FX market is a shop that sells the currencies of different countries, such as dollars and euros and yens and pounds and rupees and so on and so forth. Now, your exporter who has received this inflow of dollar, he wants to convert it into rupees, so he will go to this FX market and he will supply or sell dollars, and in return he will buy or demand rupees. So all of these inflows of dollars, ultimately when some Pakistani receives these dollars, he will ultimately go to this FX market, give away or sell these dollars, and in return buy or demand rupees. So remember this thing, this is important. All the inflows of dollars, again regardless of which transaction is creating that inflow, they will ultimately create demand for the local currency, the rupee, since we are talking about the balance of payments of Pakistan. On the other hand, if you think of all these outflows of dollars, think of a Pakistani wishing to import something from some other country. Imagine that there is this Pakistani guy, he wants to import and buy a computer from, let's say, UK. Now, living and earning and working in Pakistan, this guy would most probably be getting his salary in rupees, the local currency. So before he can, pay to get his imports from the UK, before he can pay these dollars, where will he get these dollars from, since he's earning in rupee? Well, of course, first he will take his rupees and come to this FX market, and this time he will sell or supply rupees, give those rupees away to this FX market, and in return he will demand dollars so that he can then pay for the things that he wants to import. So all of these outflows of dollars, remember, first and foremost, Pakistani people who are conducting these transactions and sending dollars out of Pakistan, they will first have to go and supply their rupees so that they can get these dollars. So all of these outflows of dollars from the country, remember, they ultimately mean that there must have been a supply of rupee that would have been created. Now think about your balance of payments, these inflows and outflows of dollars that are being recorded here. Now, if in any given year there are too many inflows of dollars, that would mean that there is too much demand of the local currency, the rupee, that is created in the FX market. And whenever there is too much demand of anything, then its price starts to increase. So previously, if you went to this FX market and maybe the price of rupee, let's say, was $0.8 per rupee. This is basically the rupee's exchange rate, the price of rupee in terms of another currency. Now, if you observe your balance of payment throughout the year and you see that overall there are much more inflows than outflows, that should tell you that, look, there is going to be a much larger demand of rupee that will be created, and that should put pressure on the price of rupee, its exchange rate, to increase, to appreciate, to become more expensive, and maybe rise to, let's say, $1.2 per rupee. On the other hand, again starting off with this, let's say, exchange rate of $0.8 per rupee, if you observe that in that year's balance of payment there are a lot of outflows, much more outflows of dollars than inflows, then that should tell you that, look, this year there is going to be an excess supply of rupee that is going to be created, and therefore the price of rupee in terms of the other currency, the exchange rate of rupee, it will be under pressure to fall, to lose value, or to depreciate to, let's say, just $0.4 per rupee. Now we will keep on building up this link between the balance of payments and the country's exchange rate. But the basics that I want you to take away from this very first video, before we look at all the details of balance of payments, the three main basics that I want you to take away, first of all, of course, is the definition of balance of payments, the concept that it is trying to record the inflows and outflows of dollars. The second main thing that I want you to remember, the inflows of dollars will be recorded as a positive value and the outflows of dollars will be recorded as a minus value. And then remember this third thing that we have just learned, which is directly not reported in the balance of payments, but I always want you to remember this. Whenever you record an international transaction because of which there is an inflow of dollars, just put a D in front of that transaction. That should remind you that this inflow of dollar must be creating demand for the local currency, the rupee. And whenever you see an outflow of dollars, a minus amount being reported in your balance of payments, in front of that minus amount, quickly put an S, reminding yourselves that, look, each outflow of dollar will mean that there must have been supply of rupee that will be created. So before you move on and before you start memorizing the names of the different sections and components of balance of payments, make sure that you understand these three fundamental concepts, especially this link between how the inflows of dollars, they will create demand for the local currency, the rupee, and how these outflows of dollar will create the supply of the local currency, the rupee.